Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I interview a world-class expert on talent and growth stage companies so that you can build a team with Rockstars. And my guest today has built a fascinating product. It's super cool. I've got a dog. I've got a little poodle. You may have one yourself. And if so, or even if not, today's guest is going to fascinate you because he's built a product called the PupPod. And there's some other products too, which we're going to talk about. And his name is Erick Eidus. Now, Erick is based in Kirkland, which is a suburb near Seattle, or I should say Seattle is becoming a suburb of Kirkland. And he's got incredible experience working at Microsoft and Motorola, and then started this business, PupPod, a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago, but I'm going to let him tell you about that. And then what we're going to do is talk about the team that he's built, which is pretty unique in that he's got a pretty large team of contractors, some full-time, some part-time, many across the globe. And I'm fascinated to hear how he's done that, what's worked, what hasn't worked, as he's worked to kind of put together that virtual team that so many of you probably are too. So with that said, welcome, Erick, to the show.
Thank you.
It's good to have you on. So let's start with just what is PupPod? Maybe just give 60 seconds on the product itself.
Sure. So we've built a smartphone connected puzzle toy that dogs interact with. And when they interact with the toy at the right time, they earn food rewards from a Bluetooth connected dispenser. And the game gets harder as your dog gets smarter, and you can control it all from your smartphone. And so you can control the difficulty of the game from our app. And then you can also see all kinds of performance metrics on how your dog is learning. In the V1 product, and then the V2 product, which we're working on now, builds off of the features we built in V1, but also allows your dog to play when you're at work, so you can make the whole game work remotely when you're not at home. And there's a lot of other community features that we're building into the mobile app.
I love it. I love it. So for listeners who can't picture this, I'm on the website. You can kind of picture a PupPod as like this little red device, and it's about the size of a couple, maybe both of your hands put together, and your dog kind of interacts with it, and then it dispenses food across the room from a Bluetooth connected food dispenser, right?
That's right. And it's actually, we use the Kong Wobbler. So if anyone's familiar, if dog fans are familiar with that, and then we've just put a bunch of electronics and technology inside the plastic housing rather than putting food in the Wobbler. And then the food goes in the dispenser.
Yep.
And the toy makes different sounds, and there's lights, and there's timing of when the different sounds play and when the different lights flash, and your dog has to figure out when the right time to interact with the toy is based on those stimuli.
It reminds me a little of Weebles Wobbles, the toy I grew up with.
Yeah, it rocks around, and in the beginning, actually, the dog just has to sniff the toy, and we have motion sensors that detect the dog comes by to sniff the toy, and that allows the dog to make the connection with the food reward, and then the game just gets more complicated from there.
Well, give us the backstory of how you started to even conceive of this, because it's pretty novel. I haven't seen anything like it. What gave you the impression that dogs and dog owners would want something like this?
Well, when the Xbox Connect came out, my dog, I had a dog at the time that would watch TV with me, and he would interact with things on the TV, like if there was dogs barking or a dog or an animal on the TV, and even to the degree that if it was like a cartoon and there was a dog in the cartoon, he would only bark at the TV when the cartoon dog showed up, not the other parts of the cartoon.
Right.
And so there's really a lot going on inside their minds, and with the Xbox Connect and not having to have a joystick and just be able to move physically in front of the cameras, I thought, why can't a dog interact with a software, hardware-driven device?
Yep. And
it turns out that the Xbox is just a terrible computer for a dog. And so then it really dropped back to the question of, what would a dog invent if a dog could invent a computer? Yep. And so that was the line of thinking that kind of sent us down this path. And then there was a parallel realization that we give our dogs pieces of plastic, but we give 2-year-olds iPads, and that just didn't make sense. So the idea that animals weren't going to have software-driven products, it just was obvious to me that that product category was going to exist in a decade, particularly with the advances in connected homes and smartphones and millennials just being glued to their smartphone,
Yep.
and also getting dogs as kind of child substitutes or people treating their dogs almost like children, in some cases better than children. That there was going to be a opportunity to create a new product category that was using technology to make better products, more interesting products for animals and for humans.
Got it. Fascinating. Well, so you came up with the idea. Now let's talk about kind of how you've built the team, which, like I described in the intro, is really a virtual team in a lot of ways. You've got a couple of full-time people, but you've really created a great extended team. What led you, I guess, first of all, to decide on that structure? And then second, how did you kind of go about building it?
Well, when I left Microsoft, I started my own consulting firm.
Yep.
And we did focus on user experience design and app development for mobile and web apps. And my whole team of designers and developers and program managers and QA, everything was in the Ukraine. So and that grew over time and evolved into that, having my team be distributed, and then my clients were also distributed. Some of them were in the Seattle area, but many of them weren't. So I just kind of got good at the skills of building products with remote teams, and so it was natural for us to leverage a lot of those same folks for development and design that we were doing, that I was working with for software products. But then we had to add in other resources for hardware development and marketing and other skill sets about taking the product to market, because as a consultant, I was just building products for other people. But that was, I think, the transition that made this, got us to the structure we're in now. And it's very low capital, very flexible.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of benefits.
And where are most of these folks geographically now, and what is the type of roles? Are these all technical folks, or some of these marketing and growth folks? What's kind of the mix?
We've got some of we essentially hired, like, our electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, industrial designer were in the local area because they're all involved in the physical product. So we wanted to be able to get together in person when there was like a circuit board that was built, or a 3D model that needed to be printed, and where we were working with physical items, it was beneficial to be within driving distance of each other. We're not all in an office together, but our software team is all in Eastern Europe. We've got manufacturing partners in China and India. We've got other support folks that are in various places around the U.S. Our copywriters in Colorado, and we've got a guy helping us with marketing support in Tennessee. And for a while we had one of our marketing folks was in Mexico.
Yep.
Really, it's once they're not in the same room with you,
it doesn't matter.
You got to use tools to work together. So
let's talk about that. What are some of those tools, and then we can talk about some of the challenges, because we'd be lying if we didn't say there's challenges with doing it this way. But what are some of the key tools that you found to be really useful in keeping the team in alignment?
Well, I write long emails, and I think taking the time to write documents and write emails that go into very specific detail. I'm an engineer by background, so when I write, the way I write, every sentence has meaning, is there for a reason, and sometimes it takes 4 or 5 passes. But if you're dealing with time zones, the more precise and the less confusion you create in your communication, it allows you to. It pays off, even if it takes you all day to write the email. It may save you multiple days of, going back and forth with time.
And you found that to be more useful than what some companies choose, which is Slack or Zoom or whatever. I'm sure you use other tools too, but why email? Why have you found email is the way to do it?
It's not the only way. It's just we use a lot of Google Docs. A lot of I do think that like real-time collaborative access to docs so that people can see the latest version is a huge benefit. We've started using Slack a little bit mostly with the development team. It might grow into a bigger group. We use a lot of online tools. So we use Team Gantt for our schedule. That's all, in the cloud.
Yep.
We use a lot of communication tools, basically Zoom, Skype, or Hangout, or WeChat. We kind of use, depends on who the people are in the group, but any of those kind of tools are useful. We use some. We've actually, in this project, we are in the latest version of the product that we've been designing. We've been using a tool called Figma. Figma allows the designer to post the whole UX spec, and then allows us to link screens, like buttons and screens, to create like a clickable prototype. And then we can do usability studies with people anywhere, because it just shows up in the browser. We just share a link to them and share a link with them. And then if they're screen sharing, we can see what they're clicking on when we ask them to try different scenarios in a prototype. There's also a tool called Zeppelin that helps with the transition between the design output and the developers. It actually allows developers to grab sample code for some of the stuff in the design. So those have been pretty good tools.
What have been some of the specific challenges that you've faced in managing a distributed team across the world, not in the same room, not in the same time zone? And there's the obvious issues, but language and barriers, et cetera. But what have been some of the very specific issues that you faced that you never would have anticipated?
Oh, well, I would say the way that we try to avoid the issues is by being very deliverable focused. And as long as the deliverable is really clearly defined and the team is all working to get the deliverable done, or that may just be one or two people working to get the deliverable done, then it allows us to not make too many mistakes, and it helps keep people focused, because probably the biggest thing that's hard to do is get that, like, some kind of cohesive culture between people. Like, I think most of the people working on the project are passionate about the product and the vision we have for the company, but they're contractors, and that's fine. But there's not it's not like we're all in the same room together. Yep. Now I will say that, like, with my co-founder, finding him and the combination that we have is really unique. That we haven't talked about that at all yet. I don't know if that's one of your questions, but
it is. That's where I was going to go next, is to tell me about the full-time people that you've got.
Well, my co-founder, we have a really great working relationship, and I know that sounds pretty surface level. The thing that we have very complementary skills in terms of his experience with development. So he's the CTO, and then the way I describe it is, like, he's responsible for every line of code, and I'm responsible for everything else. Right. And we really trust each other to make the decisions in our area of expertise, but we also push each other to think from lots of different angles. We're both pretty analytical, so that helps, that we have a real high fidelity level of communication. It's not we can go really deep, but we can also talk about we can also think through the company strategy and big decisions. So I can't, I've talked to a lot of other entrepreneurs, some of them friends, some of them that get referred to me where they're looking for advice. And the relationship, finding a co-founder, having
It's everything, right? It's like a marriage.
It is. It's very much a marriage. I mean, in the course of doing our product, there's been multiple life events that we've gone through, and you're going through that together. And people's this is super high risk, and so if you don't figure out how to get the incentives aligned, then there's a good chance that the founding team is going to break apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we haven't. We got a lot of advice from a lot of other people, and I think we've done that really well. And to some degree, there's no way to be an entrepreneur without being lucky in some places, and that's one of the places that we've been just really lucky. Is the fit was I think we've grown into a fit that you don't know all that when you get started, and it's evolved really well.
Yep, got it. Well, I give you a ton of credit because it's one thing to conceive of a very cool product, and I encourage people to check out PupPod. I'm going to be ordering one today. It's so cool. Molly's going to love it. And it's another thing entirely to build a virtual team, and you've done it. And I give you a ton of credit because a lot of people have tried it and swear that they'll never do it again. It's just impossible. So clearly you're doing some things right, and I give you a ton of credit for that, Eric, and I really appreciate you sharing your advice. How can people learn more about PupPod or get in touch?
Oh, well, the best place to go is on our website. There's a bunch of videos there. So it's spelled PUPPOD.com, PupPod, PUP and POD pod.com. There's a contact us link there. You can send us email directly if you want, or you can send it to info@puppod.com, and I read all of those. And if there's folks out there that listen to your podcast that hopefully want to be customers, or if they are in other different either investors or companies that provide services they think would align well with us, we'd love to hear from them.
Awesome. Thanks again, Eric, for making the time. We appreciate you being on the show.
You're welcome.